My name is Aphrodite Jones. As a true crime author, I take on controversial cases. I track down the story behind the story, and I won't stop until I get the truth. Las Vegas. They don't call it Sin City for nothing. Every year, 40 million people come here with one thing on their mind: hitting that elusive jackpot. But for those who actually live here, most prefer to make money the old-fashioned way. Longtime resident Robert Bessie leaves his house every morning at 4 a.m. for his construction job out in the Mojave Desert about 60 miles away. And November 14th, 2012 starts out no differently.
I think from Robert's perspective, it was going to be just an ordinary day, one that he gets up early in the morning and is just driving north of Las Vegas.
He's driving kind of fast because he's always running late, and he sees a car pull out behind him.
He thinks he's being pulled over for a ticket.
Exactly.
He expected for the lights to start flashing at any moment, but it never happened.
Driving on the road at 4 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. If it's not highway patrol, who in the heck is this car?
That vehicle came up into his blind spot, and as he was turning to look to see who it was, he hears this pop, and then a sharp pain in the back of his neck or the back of his head.
Robert can see his back window has just been blown out.
By some miracle, he pulls over.
He doesn't know if he ran over something and maybe debris came through a window and hit him in the neck.
But when he touches the back of his head, Robert can feel blood pouring down his neck. What's more, he thinks he can feel something else. A bullet.
A bullet.
It appears Robert has just been shot in a drive-by.
He calls 911 and describes to them what happened.
I feel a knot in the back of my neck. I don't know if I've been shot but I'm bleeding like hell.
Listen to his voice. Listen to how calm he is.
I don't know how they didn't kill me.
After being shot in the skull? Really?
I don't know. I have no idea.
He also called his job and said, "I don't think I can come in today. I've been shot." And their reaction was, "Yeah, right. Get in here."
I cannot fathom anybody being shot in the head and being able to call your boss? Whoa. Paramedics rush Robert to the Las Vegas University Medical Center in serious condition. He undergoes surgery, and doctors do in fact find and remove a bullet from his skull. Miraculously, he survives.
He was very lucky to be alive, and I've been a violent crimes detective for many years, and I've never seen incidents like this where people survive it.
I've come to Vegas to get the story from Robert himself, but when I arrive, he's reluctant to meet me. Not only does Robert live in fear since that traumatic morning, but he's also wary of the media because he says they have only told one side of the story.
You need to be shown as the victim, because that's what you are. People need to know that.
After much convincing, I finally get to sit down with perhaps the luckiest man in Las Vegas. What did it feel like at that point that you know you're actually alive? You cheated death.
I enjoy every breath I take, every hug I get, every smile that I see on everybody's face. It just, life's precious to me.
When Robert recounts the story of that nearly fatal morning, he attributes his survival to one crucial moment.
So I move over into the slow lane, and this vehicle was just hanging there. All I could see is the front tire and the fender. So I turned to look at them like this, to see why they were just kind of hanging there. So the bullet hit me dead center in the back of the skull and followed my skull around and ended up lodged behind my ear.
So because you turned, that
saved your life?
That is, I believe, what saved my life.
Robert's fateful decision also gives police their first clue. Detective Lee Majors is at the hospital when Robert wakes up after surgery.
Loud pop sound.
Do you recall seeing anything? Did you see anybody? Did you recognize anything?
He was alert and aware.
That you recall?
He was more than willing to talk to me.
It was a gold SUV.
You're positive?
He saw the vehicle that drove beside him was a gold SUV.
Yeah.
I saw the make, the model. It was a gold Tahoe.
Besides describing his glimpse of the SUV, Robert also shares some intimate details about his personal life.
I said, is there anybody out there that might have it in for you, that might want to hurt you?
I'm going through a divorce right now. It's not good, but...
And he said that the only thing that he's had is an ongoing dispute with his ex-wife.
There's a fine line between love and hate. And when a couple gets divorced, that line is easy to cross.
What's your wife's name?
Amy.
Robert's ex is Amy Bessie. The couple met 20 years ago when she was Amy Pearson, a 23-year-old blue-eyed beauty.
She's drop-dead gorgeous. I mean, she was a beautiful woman.
I mean, was it love at first sight?
For me, yeah. We really hit it off. Good conversation. We had a lot in common.
Both Robert and Amy are single parents, each raising children from previous relationships.
She had 2 kids. I had 2 kids. I'd already been divorced, and I didn't want to mess up another marriage. I wanted it to be right.
And for a while, it is. Robert and Amy tie the knot in the spring of 1994 with their children by their sides. Amy's oldest son, Michael, is just 3 years old, and her daughter is 1.
I approached Amy and I said, you know, we're married now. Do you care if I adopt the kids so we can make our family whole?
Over the years, Robert and Amy have 3 children of their own, for a total of 7. Taking on the nickname, the Bessie Bunch. Amy stays home to raise the kids, even homeschooling them for most of their childhood. As a contractor, Robert works 7 days a week to keep the family not just afloat, but prospering.
I was more than happy to go to work. I made enough money that she wouldn't have to work. We wouldn't be millionaires. We wouldn't be, you know, rich, but we'd be happy.
The good times include fun family vacations, camping, skiing, and going to Disneyland. In the little spare time Robert has, he does home improvements with the help of his oldest son, Michael. It's a father-son bonding that turns lucrative. Robert is able to flip a few of their properties and eventually buy Amy her dream house.
It was a big house. We got to pick out the whole decor, or Amy did.
But when the financial crash of 2008 hits, it hits the Bessies hard.
Things started slowing down at work. Things got real tight. So tight that it got to the point where we ended up filing bankruptcy. So we ended up losing that house. It went into foreclosure, the whole thing.
How was Amy when you had to tell her that, honey, we can't live in your dream house anymore?
We'll bounce back. It's just temporary.
She was devastated. She couldn't believe it, kind of thing. And that's the only way to describe it. She just couldn't believe it.
You weren't her knight in shining armor anymore.
I felt less and less that way towards the end.
For the Bessie Bunch, Robert says it's the beginning of the end. And today, Robert's grateful it all didn't end for him. If this drive-by shooting wasn't random, police wonder if his messy divorce from Amy has anything to do with it. Investigators head to Amy's house to find out.
We went to her last known address, and we see a gold SUV parked in front.
So you're thinking,
This is our vehicle.
Coming up,
It was devastating to me that they were there and I had just been shot.
Your husband was shot. He's not dead. He's alive.
oh my God.
Just 24 hours after Robert Bessie was shot in the skull on a desolate highway, Las Vegas police are trying to figure out whether the attack was personal. Robert's in the middle of a messy divorce with his wife, Amy. And a vehicle matching the description of the shooter's car is parked in her driveway.
The gold SUV right there, their first hit? This sounds too good to be true.
And it is.
How you doing?
Detectives quickly discover this is an outdated address for Amy Bessie. The current homeowner tells them he has no idea who Amy is, and it's just a bizarre coincidence that he has the same type of vehicle that they're looking for.
Involving that car.
I just picked that up this morning. It's been in the shop all week.
So you didn't have it last night?
We actually went to the shop, retrieved the records, and his vehicle was at the shop during that time.
While police track down Amy Bessie's real address,
A man is recovering tonight after getting
reports of Robert's shooting are all over local newscasts.
Police say the suspects waited for Robert.
All the media attention draws a tip. 10 miles away from the crime scene, a truck driver reports seeing two suspicious men at a Chevron station the morning of the shooting, and they were driving a gold SUV.
Las Vegas Metro Police Department. I see that's announced.
The police went and looked at the security footage, and lo and behold, there was a gold SUV with two individuals in it, pulling up, actually going into the store, getting back into the vehicle.
I then give Robert a call and ask him to come down to the station the next day to look at the stills.
You reckon there's any of this shit?
Yeah, that's my son. That's my brother-in-law.
And he immediately identified Rick Pearson, Amy's brother, and Michael Bessie, his adopted son.
Oh my God.
The tape places Michael and Rick close to where Robert was shot, just 30 minutes before the attempted hit, and in a gold SUV.
Can you imagine finding out that it's your own son and your own brother-in-law who were there?
Why?
When Detective Majors came to you and showed you those photograph stills of Rick Pearson and your son Michael, what went through your mind?
It was devastating to me to realize that they were there in the vicinity and I had just been shot. So
I can see you're emotional about it, and there's with very good reason.
it broke my heart. It really did.
How do you go from the Bessie bunch to attempted murder? What's up with that?
To find out, police head to the real address for Robert's estranged wife, Amy, having been told by Robert that both Michael and Rick now live with her.
I'm Detective Majors. This is Detective Smith. I was wondering if your son Michael is around.
He's not here. Why?
Detective Majors decides not to show her all his cards just yet.
I believe he's possibly a witness to a crime.
What's the reaction to that?
She was very cooperative, very personable. She said, my son's not here right now,
We can come down to your headquarters for an interview later?
but I'll be able to get a hold of him.
Thank you very much.
She also claims she hasn't seen her brother Rick in days. As police try and locate Rick Pearson, Amy and her 21-year-old son Michael arrive at the station and are taken into separate interrogation rooms. Their conversations are recorded.
On Tuesday night. You remember that night?
Yeah, we went to my aunt's house.
How long were you there?
4 or 5 hours. First time we all got together in a while.
Michael is very nervous. You could tell he does not want to be there, but he wants to give the impression that he's cooperative, which he has been. When you left, where did you go after that?
Out home.
Okay. Did you stay home?
Yes.
Did you leave your house at all the rest of the night?
No.
Okay, I want to show you something. Do you know who that is? Do you know who this is?
I'd like to call my lawyer.
Busted. They knew you were there, and they've got the proof.
In the room next door, Amy is questioned about the same night.
Did Michael leave the house?
No, he crashed because he works graveyard, and if he gets a chance to sleep, that boy sleeps.
Your husband was shot in the head.
Your husband was shot. He's not dead. He's alive. I can tell by the look on your face, you're very surprised. And I can see you're visibly upset.
Hard.
You know, I didn't want to just open up like that. And that's why we're talking to you today.
Oh my God.
Is this your brother and your son? A few minutes before this happened.
Your brother and your son.
My brother and this my son.
I'm sorry to have to...
So, was she believable?
Yes, she was believable. And I told Amy she was free to go.
But her son Michael isn't going anywhere. He's arrested for the attempted murder of his adopted father, Robert.
Why would your own son want you dead? What's going on behind closed doors in this family?
Coming up,
The irony of our picture-perfect family is nobody knows how miserable most of us are.
If anybody wants to take a microscope to my life, I got nothing to hide.
did you ever hit her? After miraculously surviving a gunshot wound to his head on November 14, 2012, Robert Bessie is able to identify his son Michael Bessie and his brother-in-law Rick Pearson in surveillance photos taken a few miles away from where he was shot. The Clark County District Attorney's Office joins the investigation early on to try and decipher what motivated the shooting.
I think he's trying to make it look like a road rage.
We weren't allowed to wear makeup.
Prosecutors John Giordani and Sam Martinez begin interviewing family members who say the Bessie bunch wasn't as Brady as it seemed.
Whenever he came home from work, we never knew which Robert would come. The irony of our picture-perfect family is nobody knows how miserable most of us are. Yes.
One of the Bessie children agreed to talk about her secretive home life, but wanted to remain in the shadows.
None of us have ever been to public school. That was not allowed because they couldn't control who we were with, where we were at, what we were doing at all times.
The kids' only social interaction outside of each other is through their church, which they are required to attend 2 to 3 times a week. The Bessie children also grow up around guns. A lot of them.
At one point, I got a little nutsy with them, probably 12 or 15.
I know that there was a gun beside her bed, and there was a gun beside his bed. They would not answer the door, whether it be a mailman or a neighborhood kid, without a gun behind their back.
Go shoot. You want to come?
Ironically, it's Robert who teaches Michael how to shoot.
Yeah, that was one of our hobbies. We went shooting quite a bit.
And how to shoot straight isn't the only discipline Robert instills in his kids.
It was always very controlling. Get away from my zone.
Hey, what's going on in here?
From what I understand, Robert did have some controlling parts of his personality that he implemented in his household
This place is a mess. Hey, let's go. Am I speaking Greek?
that were not taken very well by his kids and by Amy.
According to some family members, if you broke any of the house rules, the punishment was painful.
We would generally be spanked according to our age. If I was 7, if it was something simple, it'd be 7 swats.
It's an allegation Robert denies.
When are you gonna grow up?
Amy and Robert's daughter also says Robert was especially tough on Michael.
That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't do anything. You don't accept responsibility.
If Michael did the slightest thing wrong, he was pounced on.
Are you a man?
Michael's thing was to prove himself, and all he searched for was to be good enough. Michael was always forever trying to make Robert happy.
But some of the allegations are much darker than corporal punishment. Amy's family says that Amy struggles to be the submissive wife that Robert has always expected her to be.
My mom was always in a very, very difficult game of chess with Robert on how we were supposed to be, on how she was supposed to be as a mom.
You don't seem okay. What's going on? I'm fine.
My mom would try to tell me that she ran into a door and that's why she has a black eye.
Mom, you can tell me what's going on. I'm the mom. You don't need to worry about me.
I know that my mom was hurting and desperate, and Michael loved my mom, and he would do anything for her.
And what does Robert have to say about these allegations of spousal abuse?
Did you ever hit her?
No.
Ever?
There's no reason to hit her. If anybody wants to take a microscope to my life, go for it. I got nothing to hide. I'll tell you the truth, even if it makes me look bad.
What really is going on? It's a he said, she said. This family's got my head spinning.
To get away from the drama at home, Michael's family says that he enlists in the Army in 2011. Shortly after, he is shipped out to Korea.
We thought it would be a good career choice for him. I believe it was a good opportunity for him for a good education.
And when Michael comes home almost a year later, he's a changed man. For one, he has a new girlfriend named Courtney Smith. And two, he's much more self-assured.
He wasn't the timid boy constantly worrying about if he's doing the wrong thing. Robert became seriously threatened by that.
The tension in the Bessie house is about to come to a boiling point. It's May 21st, 2012, 6 months before the attempt on Robert's life. According to Robert, this is what happened.
We need to talk about money.
Michael and Amy had decided they wanted some money from me.
We gotta do this now.
Yeah, I want to talk about the family budget.
I'm not gonna talk to you about the budget with him.
Talking about it with Michael.
I'm feeling like I'm being pushed out of the picture here. I go to work, I come home, and I got no say-so in what's going on in the family.
You have time, and he's not around, we'll talk about it, okay?
We're going to talk about it now. Robert?
So I went to bed.
Get up! Get up!
Midnight, Amy comes in.
Crazy! I want you to get up!
Stop it!
I'm like, please stop hitting me. I'm not hitting you. And it progressed from there. I get up, push her back.
I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm sorry.
And she come up with a kick so hard in my gut that it put me up against the wall.
Michael is right outside the bedroom listening to the struggle.
Stay there.
Amy and Michael take the youngest kids and are gone for 3 days. They finally return home on May 24th. Robert says he was asleep in the backyard holding a gun when they came back.
Hey, back off, Michael.
I was startled by
Your hands, let me see your hands. My hands are right here.
Now I'm kind of paranoid.
Relax.
This is not a good situation. I'm just gonna get out of there.
You received a call from this address?
That's right.
But Amy's already called the police, claiming her husband is pointing a gun at his family.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. What's this?
Yeah, I called the cops.
They asked Robert to leave the house,
It's my house. Oh, that's what I do.
and he does. For good.
Yeah, Mike. Guess you grew up, huh?
That was the end. She made it very clear that was the end.
Robert files for divorce and moves 40 miles away from his family.
Well, I was house sitting until I could figure out a place where I could stay. And my focus was, how do I get my kids? How do I see my kids?
For 6 months, his only contact with Amy or Michael is to arrange visits with the kids.
Does that make sense? They wait for 6 months after Robert's out of the house to retaliate?
Coming up,
They were almost flirtatious. Some of the feedback that I got was I probably wouldn't do that with my mom.
That is too creepy for me to even think about.
while in jail, awaiting trial for the attempted murder of his adoptive father, Robert, Michael Bessie keeps quiet about his motive. authorities hope Michael's accomplice, Rick Pearson, might be able to help them understand the real reason for shooting Robert.
I think we'll know more when we get the brother.
But Rick's been missing since the night of the crime.
So, Rick Pearson is where?
Rick Pearson now became a ghost. He's on the run.
But he never really went that far. After months of searching, a tip finally pans out. Rick's been hiding in a house in Las Vegas.
Don't shoot!
All right, turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
But when Rick is arrested, he doesn't admit to anything. Investigators continue to shy away from their initial theory that Michael shot Robert to protect his mother.
The facts reflected that Robert was no danger to her whatsoever for at least a couple of months before the shooting occurred.
Detective Majors believes there's something else behind this crime, and he wonders if Amy was not only involved, but if she orchestrated it.
It's here. Michael and his mom are very close. She's very controlling. She's very manipulative.
Based on everybody's idea of who Michael is, that he's a follower. And he really doesn't do much on his own, and especially something this significant.
Some describe the closeness of the relationship between mother and son as unnatural.
Some of the feedback that I got from eyewitnesses that actually saw them interact together was, I probably wouldn't do that with my mom.
In one police interview, Michael's boss from a nightclub at the Treasure Island Hotel says he saw things that would make anyone uncomfortable.
Well, she liked to come in.
She liked to drink while Michael was there. He was very close by with her, very protective of her. And the first few times that she came in, guys were hanging all over her because she wasn't afraid to show her wares. Michael didn't interfere, but it just, you could tell it really bothered him.
Did you ever witness anything that would lead you to believe that this was an unnatural relationship?
Nothing that I can put my finger on. It almost seemed closer than a mother-son relationship should be, physically. They were always touching, always hugging, always playing grab ass with each other.
She would grab his ass?
Yeah. Smack him on the butt.
You're being touchy-feely with your son? In public? What's up with that?
I never seen anything like that, and I don't believe that they would behave that way. That is just too creepy for me to even think about.
Boys slap butts in football, and they're not all gay. So there was nothing incestuous about if a butt was slapped. It's not weird.
Detective Lee Majors isn't trying to prove or disprove an inappropriate relationship. He's trying to figure out who the real Amy Bessie is.
What I was looking at was to show a pattern of behavior. The focus is the type of manipulation Amy will go to get what she wants, and that's what I was putting my emphasis on.
His mom...
Anything Michael did, even in the bar when he was working, she guided it. Okay. She told him what to do, and he did it.
But Detective Majors has no hard evidence to confirm any of his suspicions about Amy's involvement. Until December 18, 2012, 6 weeks after the shooting, when authorities are dealt their ace in the hole.
Check this out. Look at that.
I happened to get a letter from an inmate who is sharing a cell with Michael Bessie. They must have been bored talking to each other, and Michael decided just to tell him what he was in for and what happened.
A jailhouse snitch who's looking to make a deal? How reliable is that?
How'd you get busted?
There were tiny details that he gave that had not been a part of the police report.
He gave us a timeline that was so detailed that there's no possible way he could have pieced that together from other sources.
So he had inside information.
Michael told him those things. I can say that with certainty.
Seems like what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas.
Not only did Amy persuade Michael and Rick to kill Robert, she promised a sweet payoff for doing the job.
There's a life insurance policy worth $250,000.
Turns out, even though Robert and Amy are getting divorced, Amy's name is still on the policy.
The real issue was greed. It was money. Plain and simple. $250,000 is a lot of money for anybody. And I think she put $250,000 up against this guy's head, and I think she made her choice.
Money. The oldest reason in the book for murder.
Authorities arrest Amy on January 4th, 2012, 2 months after the botched hit. Robert is heartbroken when he finds out.
After everything we've been through, I mean, really? That's how I feel. I still feel that way. Really? I still don't understand to this day.
Once Amy is incarcerated, authorities are able to dig deeper and uncover even more twists in the conspiracy.
Say hello to the mastermind.
Coming up.
Amy had asked me if I would hurt him, beat him up, or she wouldn't mind if he even disappeared. That's how she put it.
How good did she think she was in bed?
Amy Bessie is under arrest for her role in the highway murder plot to kill her estranged husband, Robert. With the mastermind in custody, investigators soon find out Michael and Rick aren't the first ones Amy approached about killing Robert. Amy first went to an unlikely outsider, Michael's girlfriend.
Courtney Smith came into the family, and Amy kind of took her under her wing. Courtney had prior abusive relationships, so I think she related to her.
So they commiserated.
I believe so.
When authorities question Courtney, she says her girl talk with Amy turned into something much more sinister on Father's Day 2012.
They knew that he loved Red Bulls, that he drank them every single day. And Amy had put some arsenic in the Red Bull that they were going to deliver to Robert.
Can you do this to Robert? Sure. Make sure you say Happy Father's Day to all of us.
Father's Day? How ironic is that?
Michael's girlfriend came up the walkway with a Red Bull and saying it was from my children.
What are you doing here?
I'm here to give you your Father's Day gift from Amy and the kids.
She kept insisting on me drinking it.
Happy Father's Day. Drink up.
It's just weird, you know?
Yeah, I think, you'll have it later. You tell him I said thanks, okay?
I will.
After she left, I cracked it. It didn't pop like a carbonated drink should, which made me very suspect. It was obviously open.
She was already spending the money before.
Courtney claims to police she only found out later that the drink had been poisoned. In exchange for Courtney's cooperation, no charges are brought against her.
She started talking to Michael's biological father.
After the Red Bull plot failed, authorities say Amy grew desperate and ready to cast her spell on someone else.
How are you?
Her ex-boyfriend and Michael's biological father.
You're so nice. I miss this so much. Robert is just not a nice person.
She told me that her husband wasn't a very nice guy and did bad things to her. That he put his hands on her. They were real strict on her. Her and the whole family, I guess. He didn't hardly even let them out of the house.
Amy uses all of her feminine wiles before popping the question.
Will you make Robert disappear?
That's how she put it.
You crazy?
Did she really think if she slept with her ex-boyfriend, he'd kill for her? How good did she think she was in bed?
With a list of would-be hitmen as witnesses, the prosecution believes they have more than enough to make their case.
We have our case.
On November 15, 2013, the trial of Amy Bessie begins. She faces 7 charges, including battery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. As for Michael Bessie and Rick Pearson, the Clark County DA's office will try them separately once Amy's trial is over. The prosecution focuses in on how Amy manipulated her son and her brother.
The way that Amy talked Michael and Rick into this is she specifically mentioned that money. They were all hurting for money at that point. She knows that Michael doesn't like Robert. She knows Rick doesn't like Robert. I'm sure she used that as well, but I think that money was kind of the centerpiece that held it all together.
After months of plotting, they settle on the morning of November 14, 2012, to put their plan in motion. Rick uses his girlfriend's gold SUV, so the vehicle won't have any ties to the family.
Everything's kind of coming together, and Rick decided to put that in a text message. I love it when a plan comes together.
But when uncle and nephew drive out to find Robert on the highway, they deviate from that plan with an unexpected pit stop at the Chevron station at 3:29 a.m.
Without that surveillance footage, we would have lost our ability to place Michael, Bessie, and Richard Pearson at that Chevron in Logandale.
Which one of them pulled the trigger? Neither Michael nor Rick has ever confessed, but the footage leads police to speculate.
Rick Pearson is seen on video getting into the driver's seat. Michael Bessie is seen getting into the passenger seat.
So in other words, that tells you that most likely Michael was the shooter.
Exactly. A moving vehicle to a moving vehicle at almost 80 miles an hour, that's a phenomenal shot. I think it may be more consistent with a military-type person. Again, we'll never know.
When the job is done,
Hey, it's done.
Rick calls Amy to meet them at a nearby diner to take Michael home, as he gets rid of the weapon.
No.
She told us that she never left the house during the time of the shooting. She stayed home. She actually told some of her friends and family that she actually had to go out and pick up Michael at a diner because Rick and Michael had just recently got a flat tire.
Why would she want to tell people that?
I think once you tell so many lies in so many different directions, you kind of forget the stuff that you say.
But that's not the defense's story. Amy pleads not guilty, and interestingly, the only witness to testify in her defense is herself. Will the jury be swayed?
I think her testimony hurt her case. She admitted on the stand under oath that she had lied to police.
So you lied to Detective Majors?
No, when not on purpose, but yes, I did.
And I don't think juries like to hear from witnesses that they lie to law enforcement officers.
Amy also cops to something even more damaging.
Amy admitted on the stand that just a week or two prior to the shooting that she had actually discussed with her divorce attorney what would happen in the event of Robert's death with regards to the life insurance policy.
On March 5th, 2014, Amy Bessie is found guilty on all counts.
Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder.
And sentenced to serve up to 44 years in prison. Once the verdict travels to Michael Bessie and Rick Pearson in jail, they decide not to roll the dice with their own lives, and both plead guilty to attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Each of them are sentenced to 8 to 12 years, leaving a family in ruins.
At the end of the day, your family's still your family, and we're human just like the rest of you guys, and nobody should point fingers.
Today, Robert is a single dad, raising the 3 children he had with Amy, and doing his best to move on.
I got no hard feelings against Mike. He's a young man who made a mistake. We were close. I don't think we're going to be close again. That's too bad. But I don't have any hard feelings for him.
As for his feelings about Amy,
Do you still love her now?
I still do.
Even after what she did to you?
I can't change the way my heart feels. Maybe time will, patch that up. But, I try not to think about that. I try to focus on the good things in life. Try to stay positive.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
After After spending time with his family, I learned in a town where everything's a gamble, you can't predict a thing.